By now, Ha had let go of the past and was adapting to the present. He continued on through the maze and was with greater strength and speed, but before long it happened. When it seemed like he had been in the maze forever, his journey, or at least part of his journey, ended quickly and happily. Ha proceeded along a corridor that was new to him, rounded a corner, and found new cheese at Cheese Station Inn. When he went inside, he was startled by what he saw. Piled high everywhere was the greatest supply of cheese he had ever seen. He didn't recognize all that he saw, as some kinds of cheese were new to him. When he wondered for a moment whether it was real or just his imagination, until he saw his old friends Sniff and Scurry. Sniff welcomed Ha with a nod of his head, and Scurry waved his paw. Their fat little bellies showed that they had been here for some time. Ha quickly said his hellos, and soon took bites of every one of his favorite cheeses. He pulled off his shoes, tied the laces together, and hung them around his neck in case he needed them again. Sniff and Scurry laughed. They nodded their heads in admiration. Then Ha jumped into the new cheese. When he had eaten his fill, he lifted a piece of fresh cheese and made a toast. Hooray for change! As Ha enjoyed the new cheese, he reflected on what he had learned. He realized that when he had been afraid of change, he had been holding on to the illusion of old cheese that was no longer there. So what was it that made him change? Was it the fear of starving to death? Ha smiled as he thought it certainly helped. Then he changed and realized that he had started to change as soon as he learned to laugh at himself and at what had been doing wrong. He realized the fastest way to change is to laugh at your own folly. Then you can let go and quickly move on. He knew he had learned something useful about moving on from his friends, Sniff and Scurry. They kept life simple. They didn't overanalyze or overcomplicate things. When the situation changed and the cheese had been moved, they changed and moved with the cheese. He would remember that. Ha had also used his wonderful brain to do what little people do better than mice. He envisioned himself, in realistic detail, finding something better, much better. He reflected on the mistakes he had made in the past and used them to plan for his future. He knew that you can learn to deal with change. You can be more aware of the need to keep things simple, be flexible, and move quickly. You do not need to overcomplicate matters or confuse yourself with fearful beliefs. You can notice when the little changes begin so that you would be better prepared for the big change that might be coming. He knew he needed to adapt faster, for if you do not adapt in time, you might as well not adapt at all. He had to admit the biggest inhibitor to change lies within yourself, and that nothing gets better until you change. Perhaps most importantly, he realized that there is always new cheese out there, whether you recognize it at the time or not, and that you are rewarded with it when you go past your fears and enjoy the adventure. He knew some fear should be respected as it can keep you out of real danger, but he realized most of your fears were irrational and kept him from changing when he needed to. He didn't like it at the time, but he knew that the change had turned out to be a blessing in disguise as it led him to find better cheese. He had even found a better part of himself. As Ha recalled that he had learned, he thought about his friend Him. He wondered if Him had read any of the sayings Ha had written on the wall at Cheese Station C and throughout the maze. Had Him ever decided to let go and move on? Had he ever entered the maze and discovered what could make his life better? Or was Him just still hemmed in because he could not change? Ha thought about going back again to Cheese Station C to see if he can find Him, assuming that Ha can find his way back. If he found Him, he thought he might be able to show him how to get out of his predicament. But Ha realized that he had already tried to get his friends to change. Him had to find his own way, beyond his comforts and past his fears. No one else could do it for him. He somehow had to see the advantage of changing himself. Ha knew he had left a trail for him, that he could find his way. If he can just read the handwriting on the wall, He went over and wrote down a summary of what he had learned on the largest wall of Cheese Station Inn. He drew a large piece of cheese around all the insights he had become aware of and smiled as he looked at what he had learned. Change happens. They keep moving the cheese. Anticipate change. Get ready for the cheese to move. Monitor change. Smell the cheese often so you know when it's getting old. Adapt to change quickly. The quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you can enjoy new cheese. Change. Move with the cheese. Enjoy change. Savor the adventure. Enjoy the taste of new cheese. Be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again and again. They keep moving the cheese. Hall realized how far he had come since he had been with him in Cheese Station C, but knew it would be easy for him to slip back if he got too comfortable. So each day he had inspected Cheese Station Inn to see what the condition of his cheese was. He was going to do whatever he could to avoid being surprised by unexpected change. Haw still had a great supply of cheese. He often went out in the maze and explored new areas to stay in touch with what was happening around him. He knew it was safer to be aware of his real choices than to isolate himself in his comfort zone. Then Haw heard what he thought was the sound of movement out in the maze. As the noise grew louder, he realized that someone was coming. Could it be that him was arriving? Was he about to turn the corner? Haw said a little prayer and hoped, as he had many times before, that maybe, at last, his friend was finally able to move with the cheese and enjoy it. The end. Or is it a new beginning? Who moved my cheese?